Asbestos is a naturally occurring mineral in fiber form. It's light enough to be airborne fairly easily when it's not wet. And if it's airborne, then human beings can inhale it if they don't have respiratory protective equipment. It's called fibrosis, and that makes the lungs stiff. And a human being with really stiff lungs, and asbestos isn't the only thing that can result in kind of fibrotic lungs, but the lungs can't take a deep breath. People get short of breath, have a lot of difficulty breathing. Asbestosis is what it's called when asbestos does that damage to the lung. And that is a form of chronic lung disease. And it's more of a disabling problem than a fatal problem. However, asbestos fibers can also irritate the lung tissue enough to generate a cancer response in the cells that are damaged. The folks that have that problem can have lung cancer, and people are at much higher risk if they smoke with their asbestos exposure to get lung cancer. One individual I had a conversation with who grew up in this town and lived close to the plant, and he, over on that hillside over there, is the Ada Jenkins Center, which was an African-American school. And he lived on the other side of the plant. And so when he walked to school, he would walk through this essentially asbestos dump and do things that kids do after school, play and whatnot. And so, every single day he's going back and forth to school across the asbestos dump to get to school. He moved away when he was a teenager, but in his 20s he started having difficulty breathing, and in his 40s he was diagnosed with pulmonary asbestosis. It's sad and difficult to hear about a child who essentially played in an asbestos dump and ends up with that problem later in life. It's a little bit of an unusual story because it should have a fairly extensive exposure to asbestos to get that condition of pulmonary asbestosis. So you'd expect it from someone who worked in the plant. But these asbestos health problems can often be decades after the exposure before they show themselves. It's just anecdotal information from talking to people who live here that you know that there's at least the tip of an iceberg here. What does the rest of the iceberg look like?
See, I watched them build Lake Norman. I watched them build the interstate. Davison, believe it or not, if you had walked in here 15 years ago and come in now, you would know it. Okay, I'm Frank Jordan, a resident of Davison, North Carolina. My wife is Laura Jordan. We had 3 boys. Now we only have 1. I lost 2 due to their illness. One of them had a massive stroke and the other one had W pneumonia. I worked at asbestos and I stayed there for 4 years. When the guy told me, I start y'all 97 cents per hour, I sort of scratched my head, I said, 97 cents, yeah, 97 cents per hour. But anyway, I went on down there and we started working. But first shift and second shift, they ran production. And I was supervisor on second shift. They made asbestos right there. And they sent it through about 4 different operations before they ship it out for brake padding. And we did ran the machines where that you would, spinning, making the little ice cream balls. You fill them up, and then you take them off and send them to another department. After staying there so long, we have gotten used to it, and I really liked working there. But I knew it was something out there better than that, because during that time, we were young. And, I had some of the elder people say, man, you're too young to work in here. You need to get out of here. You need to try to find something else. See, this stuff is bad for your health. And it used to be so dusty in there, man, you could hardly see each other. But the government made them put dust vents in there where they would eliminate a lot of that dust because it go directly into your lungs after you breathe in it. The elderly people that works there, they say, you really want to work here? Because that stuff is bad for your health. And, during that time, like I said, they had face masks that you could use. You know, you could breathe pretty good out of them. They had some good ones. But yet still, when you eat your lunch, you still hit that stuff. I mean, it's gonna get on you, man. It's gonna get on your hand. Next thing you know, you're eating asbestos. During that time, I could have gone to work for Davidson College because my brother-in-law, he was over there during that time. He said, "Why don't you come over here and get your job on here at the college?" I said, "Let me try this out." He said, "Man, I don't think I want to work in there." So I was there until he closed it down. But and like I said, I got to take my head off for Davidson College, man. They'll help a lot of people around here, black and white. I'm telling you. It's been so convenient.
Right.
You can walk to work. You don't have to have a car. You can just walk to work.
So if we go around here, we're going to be able to see the back of the plant, the west side of the plant. And at one point, that was just an open field with a retention pond, and they would just throw their waste that was asbestos containing material into that pond, almost like a large trash dump of asbestos in the back of this plant. And you see along this street that people actually lived across what essentially was an asbestos dump. The environmental injustice of it was that these folks were African American members of our community. This plant was located in their community. They lived across the street from it. I think one day in the mid-1980s, a child came home and was just covered in white material, which is the color of asbestos. And mother made a complaint to a county environmental agency, and an investigation was done. And indeed, there was asbestos material leaking out of this field to one of the houses along the banks here. In front of these homes, the asbestos material was leaking out, and the child had played in it and got covered in asbestos. Even as recently as 2016, some more white material was seen to be leaking along one of these banks here, where some groundhogs had dug into the side of the bank and had gotten into the asbestos, which started leaking out. And they did further remediation on the site at that point for environmental protection. I worked with some community members on how to go about kind of a preliminary investigation that was informal to inform a request for a government agency to do a more complete investigation. That agency is called the Agency for Toxic Substances and Disease Registry out of the Department of Health and Human Services. I mean, when people die, there's nothing truly restorative about anything you can do about that. But to leave it completely unaddressed, uninvestigated, falls way short of anything that would be restorative justice if it's uninvestigated and not addressed at all.
Well, I think it should be remembered, like the schoolhouse up here. They had talked one point in time about making a shopping center in there. But they're doing something in there right now. But I think it should be remembered because that asbestos is all around here in Davidson. It's around. You might not can see it, but it's here. But I think it should be remembered for the town. The town should keep that, regardless. And at some point in time, they should just put up there, this is the old asbestos plant. And what it specified, we made material for brakes for cars, trucks, tractors, whatever. So I think it should be remembered because at one point in time, people made a living out of it.